What's up, guys? I'm DK, and you're watching Pro Wrestling What If, the series where I look at the different what if scenarios as terms of the world that we call professional wrestling. March 18th, 2002, Brock Lesnar had debuted for WWE the night after WrestleMania 18. He would go on to have high-profile matches with the Hardy Boys, Rob Van Dam by winning King of the Ring, a huge SmackDown victory against Hulk Hogan, and ultimately becoming the youngest WWE champion by defeating The Rock at SummerSlam that year. Brock would later have WWE Championship feuds with The Undertaker, Big Show, and even Kurt Angle throughout the next couple of years, until ultimately dropping the title on his initial final reign against Eddie Guerrero at No Way Out 2004. Lesnar would then have an interpromotional match against Goldberg at WrestleMania 20, which would end up being his final date of his first tenure with WWE. After his first tenure, Brock would try out for the Minnesota Vikings, which he would unsuccessfully do, but then go on to have a stint in New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he would win their World Heavyweight Championship until dropping it to Kurt Angle in 2007. After that, he would then go on to have a successful multi-year career in the UFC, even winning the Heavyweight Championship from Randy Couture in his third fight in the promotion. Brock would unfortunately have to retire in 2011 due to a diagnosis of diverticulitis, which I'm more than certain I definitely butchered that name. Brock would then return to WWE the night after WrestleMania 28 in 2012, and would later continue his career in the WWE as a part-time competitor until 2024, where unfortunate circumstances took place that removed Brock Lesnar ultimately from history. So a couple of reasons I wanted to talk about the subject. First of all, there isn't really any big what ifs as terms to Backlash, as we are on the road to Backlash France on May 4th. But another reason is that actually one of you guys actually commented in the comment section below for this episode to happen. So if you want to see a certain topic be a potential episode, definitely comment in the comment section below, because then it'll most likely be an episode at some point. So how I'm going to be doing this episode is not exactly how I usually do these kinds of videos and doing them like, let's say, pay-per-view by pay-per-view and seeing what they would do in that tenure, because it's unknown as I'm doing this of how long Brock Lesnar would still be in WWE, but more of I'm going to do in like 5 big points and then talk about some stuff based off of those points. So of course, let's begin today's topic of what if Brock Lesnar never left WWE in 2004. So I think the first big point of what would happen with Brock Lesnar had he not left is that he would have defeated Goldberg at WrestleMania 20. I know that's kind of like a bit of an obvious one that's like, yeah, of course he'd beat Goldberg, but he could have beaten Goldberg actually if he was still leaving. But one big reason that he did lose at WrestleMania 20 was because of Vince McMahon being upset that Brock was leaving WWE after WrestleMania 20. The fact that he had built so much time around Brock Lesnar possibly being the face of the company, that hearing him say that he was leaving the company also was very upsetting for him, and ultimately decided that he was going to have Goldberg go over on Brock Lesnar due to the fact of him being more upset of Brock leaving than Goldberg leaving. So had the case been that Brock Lesnar actually won the match against Goldberg initially, I don't know if we would get that whole 2016 Survivor Series match between the two, because I think it was based off of the fact that Brock was getting his revenge on Goldberg for defeating him at WrestleMania 20, which would end up with Goldberg winning in a minute and a half and getting another victory over on Brock Lesnar. So I feel like had Brock Lesnar won against Goldberg, I don't think we would have the storyline they would have from 2016 to 2017, even including with the Universal title, had Brock Lesnar won at WrestleMania 20. The second point I wanted to bring up about what would happen is that JBL, John Bradshaw Layfield, would not be in the main event scene. 2004 was a very rough time, especially for the SmackDown brand. There were stars like Chris Benoit that obviously went to Raw after winning the Royal Rumble and ultimately choosing the World Heavyweight Championship. A top star in Edge for SmackDown, who had just came back from a neck injury, ended up getting drafted to Raw. And with Brock Lesnar leaving WWE, that also left a huge void in SmackDown to create more stars, not only as a top face of the company, but they really needed a top heel, since of course Brock Lesnar was the top heel of SmackDown. So it ultimately made WWE have to create a brand new top heel, which they did that successfully with John Bradshaw Layfield. But had Brock Lesnar not left WWE in 2004, I think that Brock Lesnar would obviously obviously still be the top heel of WWE, and that who knows where JBL would be in this case. I feel like the character of JBL would still be a thing, but I think he would be more of a top mid-card heel rather than being the top spot of the main event, considering that, of course, Brock Lesnar was going to be the main event of basically the entire year of 2004, since once again, like I mentioned, 2004 was a rough year for SmackDown and they didn't really have any stars. My third point of what would happen with Brock Lesnar had he stayed with WWE is that I think his path would be almost identical to what we've seen with JBL. I honestly think that right away, had Brock Lesnar won against Goldberg, that he would go straight back to the WWE Championship picture. And it definitely made sense since Brock Lesnar lost the title at No Way Out. He didn't challenge it at WrestleMania because he wrestled Goldberg. So I think right away after Brock was finished focusing on Goldberg, he would go straight back for the WWE Championship and officially claim his rematch clause for the title. And I think a lot of Brock Lesnar's feuds in 2004, because of how lackluster SmackDown was going to be identical to JBL. I think that Brock Lesnar would have had 2 pay-per-views in a row at Judgment Day and Great American Bash respectively against Eddie Guerrero, where one of those pay-per-views, Brock Lesnar would win back the WWE Championship, and he would even probably have those 2 matches at SummerSlam and No Mercy respectively against The Undertaker. And then ultimately, I think that Brock Lesnar would have been the guy that would drop the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 21 to John Cena. Now, even though WWE was building the company around Brock Lesnar to be the face of the company, I feel like at this point, WWE would finally realize that with how Brock Lesnar is and how he's not really into interacting with people all that much, which you gotta be when you're the face of the company doing all these appearances like interviews and Make-A-Wishes, that Brock Lesnar just wasn't fitting the mold on that, and that I think they would realize with how over John Cena was at this time, that John Cena all along was meant to be the face of the company. So I think at some point that they realized they made a mistake in making Brock the face of the company, and that he was always meant to be the top heel of the company, and that he would be the guy to drop the title to John Cena, and John Cena would be given the ball to move the company forward. The fourth point I'm going to be bringing up as terms to Brock Lesnar staying in WWE is that I think he would have won the Big Gold World Heavyweight Championship at some point. Of course, after WrestleMania 21, there was the draft that ultimately led to the world title switching up. So John Cena with the WWE Championship went to Monday Night Raw, and Batista with the World Heavyweight Championship went to Friday Night SmackDown. And we could have finally seen the first time ever match at that point between the Animal Batista and the Beast Brock Lesnar for the Big Gold Belt. Maybe once again Brock would continue the JBL train like I mentioned, where we do see Brock Lesnar challenge for the Big Gold Belt as terms to, I believe, Great American Bash and then SummerSlam that year in 2005. But this is not where I think Brock Lesnar would win the Big Gold Belt. I think Brock Lesnar would win the Big Gold Belt exactly the way Kurt Angle did in 2006. Now, this is a topic I kind of brought up in one of our previous episodes talking about WrestleMania 22, where Batista had torn his triceps at a house show, and they ended up doing a battle royal on an episode of SmackDown determining a new champion since Batista was forced to vacate it since he wasn't able to be cleared for WrestleMania 22. So I think instead of having to choose a Raw superstar like Kurt Angle at the time, because they would have Brock Lesnar on the roster, they would automatically think, oh, let's put the Big Gold World title on Brock Lesnar. And so I think Brock Lesnar would have been the one to win that battle royal and become the new World Heavyweight Champion. And I'm not sure how his path would go. Like, would Brock Lesnar still wrestle Mark Henry at the Royal Rumble? Would he be the one that ends up having that match at No Way Out against The Undertaker? But a match that I think would have been intriguing as terms to storyline value would be WrestleMania 22, where it'd most likely be Rey Mysterio, the Royal Rumble winner, versus Brock Lesnar, the World Heavyweight Champion. Now, I think there's 2 sides to this story that I think would be very intriguing. Of course, first of all, Rey Mysterio dedicated his win to the passing of Eddie Guerrero, but you know, if Brock Lesnar and his his history with Eddie Guerrero and how he had brought up stuff like Eddie's drug addiction during their feud leading up to No Way Out 2 years prior. And I think some of those lines that like Randy Orton ended up saying and he didn't really like saying, Brock wouldn't have given a crap of saying, and it would have made sense for a character like Brock Lesnar who had history with Eddie Guerrero previously. But not only that, I think this match would be epic because we all know that Brock Lesnar succeeds in having great matches with much smaller opponents. So having a one-on-one match with Brock Lesnar and Rey Mysterio, which would ultimately lead to Rey Mysterio winning the World Heavyweight Championship, and it would have been just as much of a heartfelt moment of Rey Mysterio winning the World Heavyweight Championship as it was seeing Eddie Guerrero win the WWE Championship from Brock Lesnar at No Way Out 2 years prior. So this would have been an epic one-on-one match. And the fifth point I wanted to bring up about this topic, and I think it's the most important, is that I still think Brock Lesnar would have ended up leaving WWE at some point. I still think that Brock Lesnar at some point wanted to pursue other things rather than stay in the WWE, but I think in this case, in this timeline that I did, is that maybe Brock Lesnar actually fulfills whatever contract that he had signed with WWE, which I'm not sure how long Brock Lesnar's initial contract was, but let's say in this case it was what usually is a 5-year deal that normally WWE signs. It's usually 3 to 5, but I think with a guy like Brock Lesnar, they would have done 5, which from 2002 up until what would be 2007. And of course, in 2007, it was WrestleMania 23. And I think at this point, we would have had the Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar first time ever match at this point. And this probably would have been the match that we would have gotten instead of Bobby Lashley versus Umaga for the Battle of the Billionaires match. And I think this would have made sense since Brock Lesnar throughout his whole entire life was always a Vince McMahon guy. So that would have been a perfect representation for Vince McMahon, while we have a huge guy like Bobby Lashley that could legit beat Brock Lesnar at some point, in which in this match, obviously Bobby Lashley would win since we do see Vince McMahon getting his head shaved, in which had he stayed for WWE for those years, he wouldn't have had that stint in New Japan Pro Wrestling and never won their title. And I think this would be the perfect time that he actually does go to UFC, because it's around 2007, 2008 that he actually debuted in UFC. So maybe he would never go for that Minnesota Vikings tryout, and maybe he would not go to New Japan Pro Wrestling, but he would go straight to UFC, do his career there, and then maybe end up coming back to WWE like in the real timeline in 2012, becoming a much bigger star than he had already been while in WWE previously. Anyways, guys, that's gonna be the end of this week's edition of Pro Wrestling What If. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, share it to all your friends, and press the notification bell to be notified of when future episodes release. And let me know in the comments section down below on what you think would happen had Brock Lesnar not left WWE in 2004. But I hope to see you guys next week on a brand new edition of Pro Wrestling What If.